Hi, Dan. How are you? Great to have you on board.
Good. Great to be here.
Well, I tell you what, our first guest that I'm going to introduce to you all is the president, CEO of Virgin Orbit. It's a company that was actually only about 3 years ago was founded, and it was founded to provide launch solutions for small satellites. So that's right. We're going to be going into space during the course of the next 30, 45 minutes, and we are pleased to welcome Dan Hart. So Dan, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Very good.
And Sir Richard will be on shortly.
Very good. And I tell you what, you stop and think about what Sir Richard has done. It's hard to believe that it was a vision that he had back in the 70s. The man that had created this vision to create Virgin, and in which now, you got over 400 companies is what he's involved with, and so it's amazing. Tell us a little something before he jumps on board about Virgin Orbit and what this company does day to day. So anybody that might be watching today says, Virgin Orbit, I heard about that. Is that Sir Richard Branson? What is that? What's that all about, and what do you do?
Our mission is to open up space in ways that has never been opened before. We are developing an air-launched launch system that can put small satellites into orbit and basically depart from almost any place in the globe and go to any place in space. And that is geared towards a commercial market of new small satellites that is growing, as well as new approaches to space exploration and science, and of course national security in this whole period that we're entering into of resilience, of contested space, and the need to be able to respond quickly and very flexibly. And so an air launch system is a perfect approach for that.
Well, I tell you what, when you just talk to people about space these days and they go, wow, yeah, I remember, if they're old enough, they say Sputnik. Remember that back in 1957, the Russians and then the Americans? And I mean, that's over 60 years ago. And it's been a while, then the moon in 1969. But to most people, space is just that area up in the sky that not many of us know that much about. So I just wondered, the opportunity that you've been given with Virgin Orbit and what Sir Richard has allowed you to do and be a part of every single day, what is it that is really the most fascinating and maybe the most rewarding about all that you get a chance to be a part of every single day? What comes to mind for those of us that are novices to the fact that, gosh, I wonder what's up there? I see the moon, I see the sun, and that's about it.
Well, I've had the privilege of being in space programs and working new development programs over the last close to 40 years. And every single one of them I find incredibly exciting. And what you see through the years when you look back is that space has entered into our lives, and a lot of people don't really recognize it happening. I mean, we can't go more than 3 paces right now without looking at our GPS coordinates. I mean, that's a space system. Whenever we use a credit card, half the time when we use the internet, we're using space assets. Our military, for wideband communication, for secure communication, for reconnaissance and surveillance, for the whole command and control is centered on space systems and their ability to serve us. We know about what's happening with our planet, our climate, our solar system, because of space assets. So really, what's really exciting is when you look back, space has continued to serve us, has served our curiosity, but has also made us a more and more efficient species, our ability to connect and communicate and coordinate. And so to me, it's a great honor to be part of these development programs. And of course, Virgin Orbit is taking the next step of making space available to a whole host of new ideas, new capabilities that will serve our planet, serve our businesses, serve our national security, our curiosity, and it's just exciting to see the bar go further and further. And so we are working towards every single day opening up space to a whole new community.
it's a job that I'm sure a lot of folks are envious of that you have every single day, Dan. So thank you. So don't go anyplace, but I notice that we have yet another guest joining us, and he looks awfully familiar to us all. Yet there he is, ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Sir Richard Branson. Sir, we can't thank you enough how humbled we are, how honored we are that you would take some time to spend some time with us. And we want to thank our good friend. Of course, we're here in Dallas, Sir Richard, with Don Carty, of course, the chairman of Virgin Airlines. They worked with, alongside. He's a dear friend to us all, and he was the one that was responsible for teaming us up, I guess, best put. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and congratulations for all you continue to do. You're you're an idol to many of us. We go, oh my gosh, the things he gets to be a part of. I was reading your bio, and it said that 16 years old, you created a magazine called Student, and that, oh my goodness gracious, what a life you have had, my friend. Thank you again for being here with us, Sir Richard.
Thank you very much, Richard, for having us, and look forward to discussing this with you.
Well, I'm alongside David. David is the chairman of Leadership or America's Future Series, and he's the one for putting this Space Innovation Roundtable together. So, David, I'm going to go over to you. Take it away and talk to Sir Richard, and I know you want to thank him for being a part of this as well.
I do want to thank you, and I want to be really quick with this because our audience wants to talk to you and hear what you have to say. But Don Carty, on January 12th, 10 years ago, was the first person the America's Future Series ever honored. He was inducted into the T. Boone Pickens Mentoring Hall of Fame at an event we put on, and so we're just big fans of Don Carty. He's a great friend and a great leader, and we want to thank him and thank you for coming on board. But I'm going to leave it back to Scott, who's got some questions for you. Love to hear what you have to say about space and all of your endeavors.
Don
well, I tell you what,
also a formidable competitor before he became chairman of one of our Virgin companies. So respect to him from both ends.
Well, understandable, because we all, I guess, feel much the same way about Don Carty. Good man, great guy. Well, I tell you what, Sir Richard, if you might, you've got a long history of being adventuresome, and certainly the incredible entrepreneur that you've come to be. Whether it's ballooning, driving amphibious cars, kite surfing, mountain climbing, jumping off casinos, driving tanks down Fifth Avenue, you've done them all and so much more. And that made me think of a quote that you once shared. It said, "Life is a hell of a lot more fun when you say yes rather than no." So to say the spirit of adventure has had a positive impact on your life would be, I guess, an understatement. So in your mind at this point, where did that all come from? I talked about the student magazine when you were all of 16. You were the entrepreneur when you were still a teenager in high school. But I just wondered, was there something in your childhood that said, you know what, this is what I want to be a part of? 50 years from now, this is where I want to be going. Where did that all come from?
I think my mother played a very big part of it. I mean, she did things that she would have got arrested for today. Like when I was, I think, 6 years old or 5 years old, she pushed me out of the car and told me to make my own way to Granny's house. She would, take us down to a fast-flowing river and say, "You've got to be able to swim before we leave this river," and just make us go into the river and learn to swim. So her approach was, if I don't kill our kids, they're gonna grow up and be tough and hopefully do extraordinary things. And somehow she managed to avoid killing us. I think another thing that had a big influence on me was being a dyslexic, which sounds strange to leave school and start a magazine age 15. But I was hopeless at formal school work. But I loved what was going on in the world. I loved to campaign on issues that I felt strongly about. I mean, I was against the Vietnamese War, as I think all young people my age were in those days, and felt the need to set up a magazine and to campaign on issues that I felt strongly about, and I think managed to surround myself because I was dyslexic, with people who were better than me and managed to learn the art of delegation very early on. Find people like Dan to run Virgin Orbit. That held me in good stead throughout my life.
Very interesting. And how about it, Dan? I might ask you, you hear what Sir Richard just shared with us. What about the biggest influence that he has had on you? And secondly, what might be the biggest lesson that you've learned from him that all of us could learn, but you've worked alongside of him? You've been at the organization since 2017. I just wondered some of the things that might have affected you and touched you and that you've learned from.
You know, coming into Virgin, number one, you're immediately affected or struck by the vision and the boldness of the vision. When Richard and the Virgin Group have an idea, they mature it, they discuss it, they're in an orbit of brilliant people most of the time. I mean, the people who come through offering suggestions and ideas and thoughts, and then they take a bold step and they drive forward. And so that's very striking. The other part is, and I think Richard touched on it, is there's a sense of purpose for every one of the businesses. And it's something that you emotionally connect with. And so there's both a thoughtful and visionary drive to do something in the world, and a purpose that frankly brings it home and makes it personal. And I think everyone on the team vibrates to both of those.
Makes a lot of sense. Certainly understand. Let me ask you both this question. Your program is all about innovation and certainly the exploration, the commercialization, and really the defense of space, something that we look up to every single night. Now, the way we use space today has certainly changed a lot in the last few years, both here in the United States and, of course, internationally around the planet. So my question to you both is, I'd like to hear what you have to say about what would you say are the most important trends to monitor when we think about space and certainly defense? What comes to mind?
Well, let's see, Richard, would you like to take that first, or would you like me to?
As long as you don't take every word out of my mouth. Anyway, you go.
Okay. Well, you know, a few things. You know, number one is we are learning a new time in space. To me, space it sort of resembles the ocean, the seas of 500 years ago, where our commerce was dependent upon it, our national security was depending upon it, and we weren't sure exactly what was going on out there. And so there was a lot of growing up to do. Space is about in the same place. There's new innovation now. There's a huge new transformation going on with small satellites, where the ease to get to travel in space is growing substantially. And that's what we're all about, of being able to fly to any place in orbit from any place on the ground. At the same time, while we're figuring out the norms of space and what's going on in space, we have to keep a close eye on the environment of space, because every place that humanity has gone to, we have found a way to, affect in a bad way. And so space debris is piling up as an issue, and we have to navigate that and get ahead of the trends before they get ahead of us. So, you know, those are some of the key movers that are happening, and maybe it's a little bit of the threat that's ahead of us.
If I could, I'd like to build on that. So Richard, so is your next great vision to clean up space? Are you going to figure out some way to cluster all this stuff together and make it so that we can move around? It's not like a beach with a bunch of plastic bottles on it?
We'd love that challenge. And I think that, we once Dan has gone to orbit, hopefully before the new year, we'll then have a vehicle that can launch rockets into space on a, if the rockets are ready, on a 24-hour notice basis. Things like cleaning up space, but obviously, one of the most important things is the massive array of satellites that are still need to be put up, and with these low Earth orbit satellites, and one good thing about a low Earth orbit satellite, it will fall out and burn up after about 5 years, but it needs to be replaced, and I think Virgin Orbit can play a very important part of that. The other thing, which is I think going to be more and more important in the future, is that to avoid conflicts, countries need the ability to replace satellites that are knocked out by a foreign power within 24, 48 hours, because satellites are critical to our well-being. And so, our plan is that over the next few years to have a number of 747s parked in strategic parts of the world with rockets at the ready to go and satellites ready to go. And I think if a foreign power that was thinking of doing something stupid knew that say the United States of America or Great Britain had that capability, they would think twice about knocking out the satellites, because they would not necessarily have that ability to replace their own if there was a reciprocal firepower.
Fascinating.
It's fascinating.
Unbelievable. Fascinating. Well, let me ask you this. What do you see in the future for Virgin Orbit in your interests in space? You've just shared some things with us, but other things that might lie ahead that are on the trajectory board, and you say, you know what? We've got to get there. We've got to get there. We've got to get this done as well. What comes to mind?
I'm going to let Dan answer this question. In brief, our initial, we try to tick box by box as we go along. It is extraordinarily, rocket science is rocket science, and it is difficult. And it's been extraordinarily tough and taken many, many years to get to the point we are at now. And I think we are finally on the verge of being in orbit with a rocket that can take off at 24 hours notice. There are definitely exciting new stages that Dan and the team have discussed with us, and I'm sure that he'd love to get going on them right away. But at the moment, we're trying to sort of hold everybody just to tick the first major box. But Dan, I don't know, do you want to do any hinting about what other things we might do in the future?
Sure. Well, why don't I take us on the road of sort of from where we are and what we have coming up. As Richard said, we are headed towards our next launch, targeting before the end of the year. NASA is our customer. So in this building, we have our satellites being incorporated into our payload assembly right now, in fact, just about 100 yards away from here. And so we'll be buttoning that up and headed for our next flight. We then will be ramping up the company and getting into a regular routine. We have some really interesting things going on with the Space Force and the whole national security community on a responsive launch. We will be deploying to Guam to do a launch from Guam and demonstrate deployability and a sort of a global capability. One thing that is not terribly mature about space flight right now is that we have to do it from these large monuments like Cape Canaveral and Vandenberg Air Force Base and Kourou. And with our system, that will totally change that model. We have a arrangement, a contract with the UK Space Agency, with the RAF. We have an RAF pilot in our midst. And so we see space flight as another form of collaboration with our allies, and we'll see that evolve. And we plan on being a big part of that as well. We're talking to another half a dozen countries about doing space flight from their shores. So we'll be growing up our pace and making space flight from anywhere to anywhere normal, and becoming a very important part of the national security fabric, where, as Richard said, if there is any issues in space, where we can be called up and respond immediately.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I was looking for a job in the space industry. Any chance I could? I'm fascinated with what you do. This is all just like something that I read about in a fantasy book when I was 15 or 20 years old. And I go, wow.
Come on down to Long Beach.
Really, you have envious positions, both of you. I'm just fascinated. Let me ask you this: as a result of that, and both of you can jump on this, but I wondered, Sir Richard, there's probably not a soul on the face of this earth that doesn't know who Sir Richard Branson is. My gosh, you had I think back to Virgin Records when I was just a kid buying Virgin Records with the Rolling Stones, and now all these years later, here you're doing all this stuff with space. We've got an incredible hotel here in the great city of Dallas, Texas, called the Virgin Hotel. It's incredible what you've done in the hotel industry, the airline industry. But I still wonder. I wonder when I look at someone like you and I think to myself, I wonder what's on his bucket list. All the things that he's had a chance to do in his incredible life, what he continues to do with people like Dan, and yet he's got to have some bucket list that is just unbelievable. Can you share with us anything else that you'd like to do out there?
Well, I hope in the first quarter of next year to tick a big box on the bucket list, and that is to go to space myself on Virgin Galactic. Everything seems to be going well in that direction. So that's my biggest tick. I'm very inquisitive. I love if I see opportunities, I'll jump in there and give them a go. And so I'm sure there'll be many other things that will add to the bucket list, but going to space is my next dream.
Well, I think you have someone right alongside here on our virtual our virtual broadcast here today. Dan, you were smiling when he was talking about going into to space. Are you going to be alongside?
I don't get to fly on that flight. I mean, my bucket list right now is all about getting this payload to orbit.
Right, that's my bucket list too.
And back.
And back, yes.
And back, right.
Fair enough. I would say for us, the most fun I have is when I see a team like we have here at Virgin Orbit doing something new and creating a new capability. And the excitement is, I'll say contagious, probably a bad word to use these days, but it's what drives us. You do a new development in space and you see the effect it has on the globe, and I think there's no job in the world like it.
So real quick question. You guys are actually hiring. You're looking for people, the best and the brightest. Is there a certain skill set, or is it an attitude? Is what would make somebody orbit material? What kind of person are you looking for? What's the hardest to find? What do you think as an America that we need to do and the world needs to do to prepare people to actually be able to perform and to do the jobs that you need them to do? So what are y'all looking for, and what can we do better to supply you those people?
So, I would say, number one, it's connection to the mission and what the company is about. This business is not an easy business. I think Kennedy said it best. We do this not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And the personality of the person needs to be able to take on a challenge and connect and follow through with it, even in difficult times. Because space launch is hard. So that's sort of overall an attitude, a resilience, and then a technical depth and a talent, whether it's in the business side or the technology side, propulsion or launch or what have you. That's what we look for.
Yeah. So Sir Richard, you may relate to this. Spoke with the CEO of McLaren many years ago. And they said that when they look for someone, they don't look for somebody who just loves cars. They said, I want somebody who loves brakes, or I love somebody who loves turbos, or I want that they, like you said, they have some technical ability and they have a passion for that thing as well as your mission. So is there some truth to that in your business? That passion?
In the role that I've played over the years, I look for people who love people, basically. If you've got leaders that genuinely care about people, want to get the best from people, want to praise and not criticize. Those are the kind of leaders we want at Virgin, and I think those are the kind of leaders we have at Virgin, which makes for a much happier company, a much more devoted company, and a much more committed group of people.
Well said.
Interesting. Very well said. People, that's what it's all about. Relationships. Love to hear that. That's great stuff. As we get ready to wrap up our conversation, and again, we can't thank the two of you enough for spending some time with us here. Dan, you referred to the crazy world that we're all enduring right now with the pandemic, not just in Great Britain, not just in the United States, but I mean, it's worldwide. If both of you could change one thing with all the two of you get to see 24/7 on your daily lives, I just wondered, how about it, Sir Richard? If you could change one thing about this crazy world that we're all a part of in the midst of this pandemic and moving forward, what might it be? What would you like to see? Just come on, folks, let's get it together. You talk about relationships, which I thought was just wonderful.
I think your words "getting it together," I think, is are actually very important. I think the idea of, America being one thing and Britain being another thing and France being another thing, and has been quite worrying. I mean, what we need is to work together to solve the problems of the world. So if you have COVID, let's work to make sure the scientists can be working together from different countries to try to get on top of the problem quicker. And if we have potential conflict, let's make sure we work together, and so on. So, and I think a little bit of that has been lost over the last few years.
I think you're spot on. Dan, anything you would add to that?
The together theme is it. It's us, humanity, against COVID. It shouldn't be us, humanity, against each other in the face of COVID.
Yeah,
makes sense. Go ahead, Sir Richard, please add more.
Beautifully said by Dan. Thank you.
Yes, totally agree. Totally, you've got everybody giving thumbs up here in the studio. So, well, I tell you what, we can't thank both of you enough for all that you continue to do, certainly with the Virgin Orbit, but all the things that you're involved with, and the other 400 plus companies that you're involved with, Sir Richard. But really, I think as much as anything, just the fact that you are role models to us all about what needs to be done and working together and the relationships that you just referred to. We can't thank you enough. Our thoughts are certainly with you. We certainly hope that you'll stay healthy and safe, and continue to do all the wonderful things that you do to make this world hopefully a better place for us all very, very, very soon. Closing thoughts from either of you? Sir Richard, anything you'd like to share as we wrap it up?
No, just to say it's been a real pleasure, and to wish Dan and the whole of the Virgin Orbit team the best of luck over the next 6 weeks. Yeah, I'm going to do everything I can to be there for the launch. So exciting days.
Well, we will tune in, and we will be praying for your safe return when you go up.
We sure will.
Right.
We certainly will. Now, I know Sir Richard has to be on. Dan, do you want to stay with us for a few minutes? And we've got some other things that we'd love to ask you of. Are you in a hurry?
If you've got a couple of more questions, I'd be happy to. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Sir Richard.
Thank you, Sir Richard, so much. Well, that was great. I just, had no idea, obviously had never met him. I remember when he was here back in 2016 and opened the hotel. I think it was 2016 or 2018, a couple of years ago, the hotel in Dallas. But really, I love the whole idea of the unity concept that you both share. It's obvious that that's part of the culture that exists at Orbit. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, Richard sets a human tone to his companies, and really enjoys connecting. I remember a visit last year. Richard had come in and had root canal in the morning. And I was ready to wave off the visit to the factory, because thinking about what that was like. But he came in and he shook hands with probably 400 people an hour after root canal, and brightened up the whole factory. That's the kind of commitment and connection that he fosters.
How special is that?
So if I could, Scott, I've got
Go ahead,
question. I want to, this theme, America's Future Series is not about just having conversations. We say we want to move the needle. As a matter of fact, we'd like to break the needle. All right, we talk about, significant change, not incremental change. So for us to collaborate, what do we actually have to do more of with regard to the British and the Americans and our other allies, et cetera, to collaborate, to share ideas, to jointly venture, et cetera, because we all can't do it alone. These are highly capital intensive exercises that you're involved in, right? And with more resources together, what roadblocks or what do we need to do more of to actually make more collaboration happen? In your
Well, I
experience?
think, number one is we need to, so thinking about space, first of all, I mean, we need to make that decision clearly. And then we need to put our efforts and our budgets, and they need to do the same into doing that, into developing activities where we can collaborate in space, whether it's in the civil space area, whether it's across weather systems and predictions, as well as certainly national security. And there are a lot of opportunities to do that. The small satellite sector and small launch is unique in this because how quickly it's moving, and the flexibility that we have, as well as it doesn't require as much resources, as much money. So there's really an opportunity here to take small launch, satellite constellations, responsive launch, and come up with new models between the Space Force and the MODs, between NASA and the now over 70 space agencies, and really come up with new constructs and do that using the commercial world as kind of a foundation.
It certainly seems complicated. You mentioned 70, space organizations, et cetera. Coordinating all of that is a challenge and getting people together. So this is kind of a Kennedy-esque, in 10 years, we're going to put a man on the moon kind of an idea, right? I guess we all need a grand vision and figure out a way to coalesce around that.
Well, or I don't know that we need a grand vision. We need visions.
Yeah.
And there may be several of them. And what's nice about the ability to do multiple programs, because the costs are coming down, is you can experiment. I mean, if you look at the entrepreneurial world, that's what they do. The communities interact, ideas come, investment charges it up, and they try it. And if it works out great, it can change the world. And if it doesn't, you move on to the next thing. And, governments working with the commercial sector need to get that kind of agility.
Well said.
Interesting. Let me ask you this, Dan. At the Space Symposium in Colorado Springs, I think it was April of last year in 2019, the Secretary of Commerce and others endorsed the vision that by 2024, so in less than 4 years, the United States will return to the moon with a permanent presence. And I'm curious what you think about that goal, first of all, and you've kind of addressed some of that today already, but where do we stand right now at this point as we ask you in October of 2020 with the pandemic and everything and all that's going on? It's sometimes, I guess, tough to put a figure on it, but what do you see lying ahead with all of that?
I think the most important thing about that statement, is the permanence aspect. And I mean, we did Apollo, where we went there and came back, and what an incredible achievement that was. I mean, I think that got most of us on our journey. I was 8 years old, staying up late and watching the TV that night in July of '69. Now with permanence, that means that we have facilities, we have capabilities. I think there's a huge opportunity to thoughtfully put a capability on the moon. Whether it happens in 2024 or not, I think it will probably be in discussion a lot in a lot of meetings, and luckily I'm not in them. But there's capabilities that we need for communication, for sensors, for understanding. There's capabilities on the moon. The role of robotics and human space flight and how they work together is something we can work on. And the other aspect is, when you think about Apollo, there was so much impact, positive impact on the way we live, on what we have, and how computers evolved, how materials evolved, how airplanes flew, how spacecraft developed. I think we can get the same kind of benefits if we approach with some of those goals in going back.
It makes all the sense in the world. That just great common sense you've just shared with us. If you've just got just a couple more minutes, Dan, Lieutenant General Harry Radke, United States Air Force, retired, and as we said earlier in the program, his son is also in the service, so it's a legacy that spans well over 50 years. Talk about a father and son that are really committed to our country. But I'm sure the general would love to come in here and ask you a couple of questions. General, welcome back.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I've never left. I just turned off my video feed, but
All right.
I'll tell you, I can't go further without noting something during Dan and Sir Richard's conversation. And, you know, the fact that Sir Richard mentioned that in hiring people, he looks for folks who like people who like people.
Mm-hmm.
And folks who praise and not criticize. Isn't that a magnificent statement for us all to think so strongly about? And Dan, thanks for staying on with us. You know, I'm, with respect to national security, and as was already mentioned, with our nation launching thousands of new objects into space, especially into low Earth orbit, and with the vision of building a secure space enterprise that we can depend upon. How do you envision bringing cybersecurity, which is another big aspect, into individual satellites and space operations activity, and thus creating for all of us a secure and resilient space domain?
Well, you know, I mean, that is a tough nut, and one that obviously is front and center. And I think, honestly, I think what we're doing terrestrially is at the state of the art. And I'm not an expert on cybersecurity, but you know, the kind of concepts of assuming, you know, penetration into the network, but protecting, you know, critical applications and data, and the layers of defense certainly need to be applied in space as they are on Earth. Space is just an extension. I mean, the network is going to extend probably seamlessly into space as we go forward.
So Dan, so one of your points earlier was about being able to replace satellites. And I guess they could be disabled a number of ways. They could be shot out of the sky, or they could be crippled by cybersecurity hacks, et cetera. So I guess this 24-hour replaceability thing helps on both of those fronts. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we think responsiveness is key. And look, getting back into a little deeper in national security, I mean, we live in a you know, we've grown up in a time where we have these monuments. They're wonderful, these launch sites, but they're also extremely predictable. If you see a rocket that has liquid oxygen flowing from its tank, you know exactly what's coming next, and so does the Russian fishing boat that never catches any fish, that's always parked outside of Cape Canaveral. So what we want to do at Virgin Orbit is move to the next step. You know, we're an airplane that can fly from almost any airport and go almost anywhere and release a rocket that can take a payload to orbit. And so the whole idea of being denied access, whether it's by human means or whether it's because there's a hurricane coming through the region, the game changes completely when you can move your launch system around. And also the role of you know, the US and our allies, and how we can collaborate across territories, across the globe, in making sure that we have capabilities in space, can replace capabilities in space, changes completely.
How about it, General? Do you have any other questions that you'd like to share with Dan?
You know, Dan, I'd like to turn to one of the questions that came in over our chat system here. And it's actually addressed to both you and Sir Richard, but now you've got to handle it on your own. But, and I know you're capable of doing that, very capable. But where does Virgin Galactic intend to travel to in space? And in the future, how far out are you wanting to go? And are there any specific target locations?
Well, you know, I'm going to have to stay in my lane a little bit, because my friend Michael Colglazer, who's CEO of Virgin Galactic, probably wants to answer that question himself. You know, they have a whole roadmap, though I'll say, you know, of suborbital travel and point-to-point travel and various levels of space tourism, and really a vision of introducing more and more of humanity into space, and the ability to see the globe for what it is, back to the oneness and togetherness of billions of people on this marble together, floating in space.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Well, I tell you what, have you got any closing questions for either of these wonderful gentlemen or not?
No, I think we've taken a lot of your time, but you've given a great session for us. We really appreciate the information, and we really appreciate all your time today. And we really wish you the best with all of your endeavors, and we'll be watching with great interest.
Yeah, we really do. Sir Richard Branson was wonderful, as we expected, and so too you have been incredible, Dan Hart. We can't thank you enough. President, CEO of Virgin Orbit. Continue success. Be safe. Stay strong, and we hope to see you again. And if you're ever in the great state of Texas someday, stop by and say hello to us all. We'd love to meet you in person.
Well, thank you. Great talking to you today. Have a great conference.
Thank you,
so much,
sir.
Dan.
Thank you again. And certainly, Lieutenant General Radegui, any closing thoughts you'd like to share with us? He was something special.
This session with Sir Richard and Dan has been fantastic, and you've given us some new vision, some new dreams, and we know you've got blueprints and plans for the future. We can't wait to hear those as you're ready to release them upon us. So thank you so much for all you do and continue to do. Take care.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, we all ditto that. I do a thing called for Leadership America, and it has to do, Dan, with people and how they treat one another, creating champions of change through a culture of civility. And both you and Sir Richard talked about civility and relationships and getting along and having good conversations and doing it courageously and just civilly so that we all can be champions. And obviously you're doing that at Virgin Orbit. So that said and done, thank you, thank you, thank you. Be strong, be safe, and we'll see you down the road.
Bye now.
All right, we're going to take a brief time out, and then we will be back coming up at about 2:15 this afternoon. 2:15, now that would be Eastern time. 1:15 Central time will be Zaire Ali. He is a technology leader and manager for USRA, working on NASA programs. So all that and much more coming up. So don't go away. We'll be back about 1:15.